about, I just have a pet peeve about this term, cable news. Because when you turn on supposed cable news, there's very little news on it. And I have sort of a sub pet peeve about the ratings. Brian, who I think was reporting, was excellent on the GE News Corp truce for Olbermann and O'Reilly, was talking about the ratings. And I think comparing Fox News ratings to CNN is comparing apples and oranges. I've seen porn stars on Bill O'Reilly's show. I've seen strippers. I've seen a long rumble line of pretty blonde women on cultural affairs quizzes, all sorts of fluff. Now, Keith Olbermann will do his oddities sections, and there's some light news there. But the kind of sort of salacious pandering that goes on Fox News, and Hannity does that as well, and he also mixes in country western stars. To compare that when you're talking about ratings, and in Fox's case, pandering for ratings, it just seems to me to be apples and oranges. Even if you don't agree with Olbermann or Matthews or Maddow, they're basically talking about public affairs. They're not bringing in these sort of salacious guests to pump the ratings. One of the things that I thought that was most interesting in Brian Stetler's follow-up piece about O'Reilly and Olbermann, that is after Olbermann, who I think wisely, once the cat was out of the bag, once we knew that there was a truce, and I believe there was a truce, I think that Brian pretty much showed that to be true. Wisely, Olbermann came out and attacked O'Reilly and Murdoch, the third worst person in the world that night was Brian. I think the most telling thing in Brian's follow-up piece about the breaking of the truce was where he quoted a Fox News person saying about MSNBC and about their having broken the truce, that something to the effect that they didn't have their house in order. The assumption there is that at Fox News, all the on-air people take their marching orders from them in suits. This is not journalism. This has nothing to do with any kind of ideals that we think of when we think about reporting and all the sorts of high ideals of journalism school, or even really of the tradition of journalism that on-air people would take their marching orders from corporate executives. You know, people at Fox don't understand why Keith Olbermann isn't getting in line and marching in lockstep with what GE calls for. We're talking tonight about corporate influence on cable news television, and I think it's important to point out that the problem isn't special to cable news, but it's an industry-wide play that routinely restricts journalists' ability to, as they say, report without fear or favor. I want to go over a couple of stories here, and some of these have been touched on already, but GE owns NBC. As the great media scholar, former Washington Post editor, and former dean at the UC Journalism School, Ben Bagdikian, who's also the author of the great book, The Media Monopoly, points out, if you're a reporter, let me step back. General Electric has completely polluted the Hudson River. The Hudson River has a bed. Its bed is full of PCBs, this toxigenic compound, almost all of it put there by General Electric. As Ben Bagdikian points out, if you want to get somewhere at NBC, owned by GE, probably reporting on the pollution of the Hudson River isn't the quickest route. I would say the same thing is true, and you can, I think some of you are journalists and some of you probably have access to Nexus. You'll find almost nothing about sweatshops in southern China on ABC News. Why is that? Because Disney has a lot of its merchandise, its bric-a-brac, its Mickey Mouse shirts made in southern China under conditions that approach slavery. It is routine. It's almost all young women and young girls. They don't become middle-aged women because they don't last that long. They don't die, but at the average age of 24, the women working in these factories, from repeated repetitive motion disease injuries, they can no longer use their hands. Brian Ross, the investigative reporter at ABC News, has actually mentioned that we have not mentioned this very much, probably because our parent is Disney. And I'm going to give just some little examples here. This may sound disparate, but in 2004, my group, FAIR, argues that the biggest bias in the media is the right-wing bias, although that's a problem. Sort of the center-right debate that goes on in the media is a problem. We think the biggest bias is a pro-corporate bias. And with that in mind, we were given a great gift in 2004 by Sumner Redstone, who was the CEO of Viacom. At that time, Viacom owned almost completely CBS. That's not quite true anymore. But he was being interviewed, and he was asked who he was supporting in the election. And usually these corporate executives decide not to answer those questions, but Redstone is like in his 80s, and I guess he said, what the hell? And after he went on sort of effusively about what an honorable man John Kerry was, he said, but I vote for Viacom, and the Republicans are better for us. I go for Bush. Now that's not only a shot down the line at CBS to everybody who works there that the boss is for Republicans, but it reflects the sort of corporate culture that's there. In 2001, in the year 2000, Time Magazine ran the last of its special issues called Heroes of the Planet, a special green issue. The entire issue sponsored by Ford. Now it goes without saying there was nothing in the issue about the pollution caused by automobiles, and Time wasn't even cagey about it. The editor at Time, when he was asked by a